Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Jazz Band Listening Experience number 2. Today we are talking about the great King Oliver, Joseph King Oliver, with Louis Armstrong playing the Dippermouth Blues. The Dippermouth Blues gets its name from Louis Armstrong, whose nickname was Dippermouth because he had this unusual embouchure. And if you look at close-up pictures of his face, you can see that. The piece was recorded in 1923, so it's one of the early ones. But Joe Oliver's solo on this particular piece, he's got a mute in his cornet, and it's become one of the most influential solos that anyone has ever recorded. A lot of people try and copy what he did because it sounded so great. He was given his royal nickname by another Creole musician from New Orleans named Kid Ory. He was a trombone player, and he just started calling him King Oliver one day, and it kind of stuck. This Creole jazz band that he had featured Louis Armstrong on second trumpet, and that was kind of a big deal at the time. Usually they only had, one trumpet player and a clarinet maybe, but this was a kind of a unique thing, and he sort of took Louis Armstrong under his wing. Towards the end of his life, Joe Oliver had kind of a rough time. He kind of had to stop playing because he had this really bad habit of eating sandwiches that were basically bread with sugar on them, a sugar sandwich. I would advise you against that, generally speaking, because he lost pretty much all of his teeth. And if you don't have teeth, it makes it really hard to play the trumpet. So towards the end of his life, he ended up working in a pool hall as a janitor. That's all he could really do. And we don't really know much about how or when he died or anything, but that's kind of a sad way for a famous jazz musician to end. Dippermouth Blues is also known under another name. A couple of years later, it was recorded by the Fletcher Henderson Orchestra in 1925, and they called it Sugarfoot Stomp. And that's the one that really took off. People know that one more than they do Dippermouth Blues. In 1927, a couple of years later, Joe Oliver moved up to New York City to make his name, but he made what probably was the worst mistake of his life. He was offered a job to play full-time at the Cotton Club, and that was one of the it places back in the jazz age, and Duke Ellington is the one that actually got that gig with his band. And we still talk about Duke Ellington today. We don't really hear that much about Joe Oliver. So, oops. There's an interesting thing that happens in this recording during the clarinet solo. And it's called stop time. Where you'll hear it. They're playing along, and then there's a lot of doom 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 cha 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 cha, and they just kind of stop for a second, but the time keeps going. So they call that stop time. One other thing that was interesting about Joe Oliver, he played with a handkerchief over his hands a lot of times, and he would cover his right hand so that other people couldn't see his fingerings, so they couldn't figure out what it was he was playing. They didn't have recordings very much back then, so people couldn't listen to what he did and write it down, so people would try to watch what he did and copy that. Well, he wasn't so keen on that, and that's why he covered his hands with a handkerchief. Some other people just did it later because they had, sweaty hands or whatever, but for him, it was just that he was being secret. So, this is Joe Oliver, and if you click on the link here, this will take you to a YouTube video, and you can watch and listen, except that the link is broken. So I will have to fix that. Dippermouth Blues, King Oliver. There you go.
Imagine Imagine the places we'll
No,
go.
nobody wants
Together.
to see
Expedia.
the evidence. Here. Okay, so you can go and listen to that as much as you'd like, and that would be fine. So I look forward to seeing how you do on this. Thanks, bye.